We went from thinking we were going to have $20 million in the bank to a point where we were only a few weeks away from not being able to make payroll. I got called into a board meeting and it changed everything. I definitely consider myself a serial entrepreneur. I started my first company when I was actually in high school. Cemented my love for starting companies and have been doing so ever since. I started Urban Stems in 2014 after a really bad flower delivery experience. I sent flowers to the woman I was dating at the time on her birthday, and it didn't show up when it was supposed to. And after that experience, and after several experiences like that, I realized I can't be this unlucky. Something must be wrong with this industry. My role with Urban Stems was CEO. When we started, we were 5 people in a utility closet that had no windows with, literally only 20 deliveries a day. We grew really fast. We went from that windowless basement to close to 100 employees doing 100,000 deliveries a day. 2017, all these on-demand companies, the so-called Uber for X's that had grown really, really fast, started going out of favor when people realized that a lot of these companies weren't profitable.
Oops.
We had lined up an investor who was going to put in close to $20 million. As this group of companies started to fall out of favor, the potential lead investor got cold feet and pulled out at the finish line. We were put in a really tough position. We only had a few weeks left of runway before we would miss payroll. So it was a really tense time. As a startup founder, when your baby is in trouble, you do everything possible to fix the situation. What I did incorrectly was I thought, I need to do this myself. I put on what I thought was this Superman cape, and I said, you know what, I'm gonna find a way to save us. This is my responsibility. My entire identity, my entire ego was surrounded around being a successful startup founder. So you feel this immense amount of responsibility to so many different people who you love. And what it does to you is it puts you in a position where you have really poor work-life balance. I really started reducing the amount of time I spent on things for my own wellness. Gym trips, which were already sparse, became fewer and far between. Time spent with loved ones and friends also went down considerably. And what I ended up with was just a really unhealthy life. And then the board decided to have an in-person board meeting in New York City. I think they probably knew that I was overwhelmed. We knew we needed to focus really on getting as close to profitability as possible as a company overall. And that really means focusing on supply chain and operations rather than growth. And our investors came out very bluntly and said, we think that your COO is the best person to be in charge of this next phase of the company. And I'd move over to the chairman role. It was a really tough transition to make because when you create something, you put everything of you into it. And to take a step back and let someone else run it is really hard, even if it's ultimately the right decision. I had made all these sacrifices to have this part of my ego built up, and now the board was suggesting taking that away. I didn't handle it well. I just started 2 new companies the next day. I thought, if I'm not running Urban Stems, I need to be running something. And so I took no time off to really mourn or grieve not being in charge of something that I'd built from the ground up. I know a lot of people have like a moment where they're like, oh my gosh, my life is completely unbalanced. That never actually happened with me. It was more of a bunch of little things. As I became more efficient at running companies, I had more free time, and I started investing it in things like meditation and journaling and working with a therapist. As I did those things, I realized, wow, I'm happier. And not only that, I seem to be getting more and more effective at running these companies. Nothing would have changed if I didn't start focusing on my own mental health and happiness. My best advice is to invest in yourself. For every dollar you put into yourself, you get at least $5 out for the business. Every one of your decisions matters a lot. And if you're really not taking care of yourself and you're burnt out, it puts you in a situation where you're just, not as good of a leader as you nearly could be. You think you're doing the right thing by constantly thinking about your business and cutting out the things that seem extraneous to your life. On the personal side, it's just not sustainable. Now that I spend time investing in myself, I am happier than I've ever been in my entire life. I've actually found it's easier to run 2 companies while I'm taking care of myself than it was to run 1 company while I was completely burnt out.
Every time that I'm falling again, every moment that can't be the same.